With features inspired by Williamsburg architecture and plant combinations that show a creative artist's touch, Betty Sturley's garden is truly a masterpiece in Michigan. The story of the garden and the gardener on a Gardner's Diary.
Where does Betty Sturley find the time to garden? Raising a family of 4 children with her husband Bill has been her main focus, but that's only part of the story. She and her husband also built their house themselves after the arrival of their 4th child to give the family more room. For many years, she made all of her children's clothes. In the winter, she paints watercolors inspired by her garden. And not only does she garden at home, she also volunteers at 3 other gardens in southeastern Michigan. Betty, we're here in Michigan, right outside of, well, where exactly are we?
Beverly Hills, but not Beverly Hills, California, though.
Beverly Hills, Michigan.
Yes, outside of Detroit.
Right outside Detroit. And you're in Zone 6.
Mm-hmm.
And it's summertime, and I just can't believe how cool and beautiful this morning is. No humidity, a beautiful breeze. This makes me think it must be the perfect place to garden in the summer.
Yes, we get all kinds of weather, though. It's not always like this. Yesterday was very humid, but this is perfect weather.
And you've got all sorts of things blooming in summer. And how big is your garden?
Well, we have about an acre of land here.
And
I'm working on gardening all of it.
As if her 1-acre garden weren't enough, she's also taking care of a friend's garden. In addition, Betty maintains gardens at a nearby church and volunteers at Cranbrook, a large public garden, where she maintains the rose beds.
I did have a garden at the zoo for quite a while. I've decided I can only maintain 4 big gardens at once. 5 was too much.
This dogwood's beautiful. I like that chartreuse.
It's beautiful. It's a brand new Kusa, Sunsplash. Got it last year. It's supposed to hold the color. It has wonderful variegation.
And that is totally hardy in Zone 6?
Yes.
Cornus Kusa Sunsplash.
They're doing a lot of hybridizing with the Kusa dogwoods. I don't know how many they have now. I think I have maybe 8 or 9 different Kusas right now.
And I noticed that your raised beds, the lawn circles a lot of your raised beds and leads you to the different areas. Did you start out with 1 raised bed or did you have a master plan? Or
Never a master plan. Gardens just grow as far as I'm concerned. We had to raise this bed because of the evergreens that I put in. And this is a natural drainage. It can be almost a river through here. So I had to raise it. The evergreens don't like to sit in the water.
That's right. So you raised the bed, the soil looks beautiful.
This is compost.
Compost, of course.
It was actually muck when it was brought. It was very heavy.
Well, the plants are responding.
Yes, they're doing very well.
Happily to your...
I fertilize with an organic fertilizer, which everything just loves, too. It's made a big difference everywhere I garden. I put all this in last year, so these are babies.
Well, actually, it looks pretty mature for 1 year.
Not bad. I think it's that fertilizer again.
It's that magic stuff.
Yeah.
And I like the way you've combined your ferns and your hellebores, hostas, everything mixes together.
Just got into the hellebores. Can't live without them
Aren't
now.
they great?
Oh, they're wonderful. For so long, too. Such a long season. I do have a fern collection, too. Have to collect everything, you know. I think my grandmother's gardens were my inspiration. My mother's mother especially was a gardener. But my mother also loved flowers, but wasn't as nuts as my grandmother was, and then I've gone completely overboard on the whole thing.
We're off to the side of your house, but this is a beautiful, welcoming entrance, very classical, with the arbor and the picket fence.
I love Williamsburg, and my husband did this for me.
He built it for you?
Oh, yes. We built the house ourselves, and we went to Williamsburg, looked at all the picket fences, and decided we liked this one best. So Bill built it for me.
The pails on your fence have a beautiful detail.
That was, Bill had to cut each one of those out individually. It took him quite a long time, but yes, this is a fence for us from Williamsburg. We almost weren't able to put the fence up because there's a fence ordinance here, but the building inspector let us do it.
Well,
He's a
you
nice
have such
guy.
good taste, they had to approve it.
It looks good, yeah.
And I like the way you pick it up down here, and you've got that beautiful blue bench as a sort of a focal point.
Yes, that's a Williamsburg building too. Bill took some photos in Williamsburg and reproduced that for me.
And this area, Betty, looks to be a combination of herbs and some perennials and sort of a mix and match.
Very much a mix, very much. I love herbs. I love the history of herbs and the fragrance. Love fragrance.
Me too.
But it was a propagation garden. A lot of the peonies that are out in front were grown from seed here. I grow things in the greenhouse, and then they'll be here for a couple of years. I just took the lilium out. They're out in the gardens now. But this year it's kind of an off year, so I'm doing some veggies.
So it's whatever
I feel like it. Yes, yeah. Yep, and it's for special plants too. This tree peony, this Harris Olson's, it's a rock hybrid with a dark center. Very unusual, and it's very vigorous. So anything really special I'll put in here too to keep track of. I love the idea of the Williamsburg, how they grow things. This is called a wattle fence. It keeps the rabbits out, which is a big issue with all of us. It's hard to know what to do with rabbits, but it's also a wonderful Williamsburg colonial touch.
it's pleasing to look at. It's nice that they can have a fence that's functional and aesthetically pleasing.
Absolutely. Being a gardener is almost like being a mother. You have to pay attention to the plants all the time to see how they're doing. You check them for bugs and everything else, just like children. That didn't sound so good.
Betty's garden has extensive water features, including a pond that brings back childhood memories. Stay with us.
Betty Sturley's garden in Beverly Hills, Michigan is filled with plants of all types, including a collection of exotic carnivorous varieties. The 1-acre property also contains 4 ponds, including one that creates the feeling of a dock at the edge of a lake. Just standing here listening to the water, it's always so soothing in a garden, and I noticed that it looks as if your deck goes right over the water.
Yes, that's from my childhood. I grew up on a lake, and we always had a dock, and I used to love to sit on the dock with my feet in the water and watch the fish swim by.
Now you have your own dock.
So now, yes, Bill did that for me.
So Bill built the dock and the arbor and the swing.
Yes.
What would you do without Bill, the builder?
We wouldn't have the gardens that we have. I have all these wonderful ideas, and then poor Bill has to figure out how to make them work. And he's also at the working end of the shovel, too.
And the bridge, you've tied it in very nicely with the garden. Sometimes bridges look as if they've been plunked down, but you've done a great job with the plants of tying it into the landscape.
Thank you. Sometimes even ponds don't fit in,
Right.
but these settle in pretty well.
Living in Michigan, though, in Zone 6, in the wintertime, what do you do with all these water plants? Is it deep enough? Do you have to worry about plants freezing, or?
Though most of the lilies are hardy, but then everything that's tropical goes in the greenhouse. And the fish aren't wintering over very well. I have some koi here, wonderful butterfly koi. So my daughter, who loves to fish, we send her in there and she catches the fish, and I set up a couple of ponds in the greenhouse to winter them over.
And you've got all these great water-loving plants along the edge, and then you carry it over to here with these ligularias that also love that moisture.
They sure do. They don't like the heat. This is a beautiful plant, a wonderful accent plant. You're here right when they're peaking too, which is nice.
This is the rocket.
Yes.
And that's a hardy perennial. You don't have to. Do you mulch your perennials in the winter? That's something I don't know about.
Don't. People do, but I don't. I think you get into more trouble mulching.
With moisture?
Yes, you end up rotting things. So I don't. Everything is pretty hardy for me.
Ligularia the rocket. I do like these. They're perfect for waterside gardens.
They are. They're
woodland
gorgeous.
Gardens.
Gorgeous plants. Very graceful.
And you use foliage very effectively, Betty.
Well, thank you.
Lots of ferns.
Texture. Yes. Well, this is a perennial garden. And so you have to think about textures and colors of greens, because that's what's mostly in the garden.
Those are huge.
The ostrich ferns. We had sensitive fern and lady fern that were native to this woods, but I brought this in. This is quite a spreader. I have to weed it out, but it's a wonderful plant.
A good weed, though.
It's a wonderful, yes, it's a wonderful weed.
This is a very painterly combination.
Thank you. It's
You've
working finally, yes.
Took a while to get it right,
Yes, there's always tweaking, you know how that is.
but you've got these different hostas, but I particularly like the way you've grouped them with the Solomon seal, the variegated Solomon seal, and then just a bit of a conifer in the back with that hemlock that looks as if you've dipped the tips in paint.
Yes, it's a silver tipped.
But this hosta is particularly unusual to me. I've never seen one with leaves that are twisted and variegated.
I think John Culpa is the hybridizer. He's a good friend. I think he did a very good job naming it. It's called Whirlwind.
So I can see Whirlwind is going to get flowers, but I don't even
Yes.
think you need flowers on hostas.
Some of the flowers, some of the hostas I do grow for flowers, the fragrant ones. Fragrant bouquet, wonderful fragrance. But yes, I agree. A lot of the hostas, they don't need the flowers. They're good enough on their own.
Whirlwind.
Yes.
It
yes.
does look like a whirlwind.
Yes, it does. It's an unusual hosta. It stands out from most of them because of that twisting. It's a good, strong grower. It's a nice one.
In the winter, Betty the gardener becomes Betty the artist, recreating the blooms of summer in watercolors. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Betty. Hi, I'm Molly McDonald. Molly, nice to meet you.
What better spot for an art show than in the garden that inspired the paintings? Betty Sturley's accomplished watercolors reflect her love of gardens and the people who create them in Beverly Hills, Michigan.
She can do her gardening in the spring, summer, and fall, and she paints all winter. And it's phenomenal. She just captures her garden.
I started out painting botanically, thinking I wanted to be a botanical painter. But then it wasn't enough because there's so much more to gardening. It's the atmosphere, it's the light, it's the fragrance. And I wanted to capture that. So then I started putting the flowers in the garden. And then I got awfully interested in gardeners' faces, people's faces. And so I've started doing portraits. And it's extremely difficult, but when they work, they're very satisfying.
Betty, we're in your front yard in Michigan, right outside. It's not really right outside Detroit, but you're
We're north of Detroit.
north of Detroit.
Yes.
And in Zone 6, I wonder, do you have to worry about covering these roses up in the winter? These are shrub roses.
Yes. A good many of my roses are grown from their own roots. I grew them from cuttings, so there's no problem with that. I don't cover any of the roses.
So you cut the shrubs back to a height where they
Cut
won't
them
whip
down a
around.
little bit so they don't whip around, and they've all come through very well. Not a problem.
Well, this one is just covered not only with flowers but buds. Even just the buds on that rose.
It's beautiful. It's a single. Makes the buds more delicate, I think. I love that rose.
And this is one of the David Austin roses?
Yes, David Austin is my favorite. I would love to meet David Austin sometime. He's done a wonderful job breeding roses, crossing the old with the new. I've forgotten the name of this rose bush. There's too many of them, and this is one I can't even remember.
Well, the label says Jaquetta.
Jaquetta, yes. It's a beauty, and it blooms a lot.
So it's a David Austin hybrid, and it's a good shrub rose, and
It's a good size, too.
And that's a good point about being on its own roots makes it a lot more hardy,
Yes.
Less concerns about
You
problems.
don't have to worry about that graft, because if it dies down to the ground, it'll come true from the roots.
You've got this great fence out here. You don't often see a split rail fence with apples trained up in sort of almost an espalier or
Yes.
pollarding and in the front yard.
Yes, well, I'm working with sun again, and I thought that would fit in with my Williamsburg look in the front. I just love that look.
I do too. The approach is more integrated for growing fruits and useful plants as well as ornamentals together. Is that right?
Yes, that's true, and I think the reason they did this, wasn't it, it was easier for them to harvest the fruit?
Well, I can see. Look at you.
Yes,
even
isn't
have
that-
real
isn't that
fruits,
easy?
Betty.
Yes.
Have you
People-
eaten any of these apples?
Yes, we did last year. Actually, I waited too long and they got too ripe. I
Oh.
wanted to leave them on on the plant so long that I didn't want to pick them. But these were supposed to be, I wanted some of the real old fashions like the pippins and some of those. But I had to get what I could that would work in this climate. So these are still interesting plants. They're a little unusual.
I like it, and it's an opportunity to play around with pruning.
Yes, I love pruning. It's another art form, I think.
And your Stokes aster or your Stokesia, that's a great little carpet. That's a
Isn't it?
clever use of using a perennial as a carpet under apple trees.
I love this color. This plant is one that I'm very fond of it, and it's a good show place for it.
The driveway may not be the first spot you'd think of for a garden, but for Betty, it's the perfect place for her lily collection. When we continue. For questions or comments, please write to A Gardner's Diary, care of HGTV, Box 50970, Knoxville, Tennessee 37950. Be sure to include the episode number and your daytime telephone number.
Betty Sturley is an avid plant collector and a gardener. Even her driveway at her home in Beverly Hills, Michigan, is filled with summer color from her extensive lily collection. I can smell the fragrance of this lily just from here. I don't even have to get pollen all over my nose for
That's
this
right.
one.
That's right.
But you've got so many different types of lilies, and I love the way you've incorporated them into that tight little space along the driveway.
Yes, I use all the sun that I can use, so we filled this all in.
And this one is just beautiful.
This is called Silk Road. It's a new hybrid lily, a cross between trumpets and orientals called oriampets. It fills in a space where everybody's trying to get a succession of bloom all the time. It's a little later. It's filling in a good space for succession of bloom and fragrance too.
And this is one of the trumpets,
Yes.
the classic trumpet.
Yep, this is a trumpet. You can see it does have that trumpet shape. They're also very vigorous. This is a baby. It'll get a lot taller. Some of them will get 7 feet tall.
Really?
They're marvelous.
So you use the lilies for subjects of your paintings
I
as
sure
well.
do, and I like this early morning light too. I love the backlighting.
Well, this is a beauty.
Yes, it is. It's gorgeous. A good friend of mine gave me this. He named his newest introduction after me, Betty Sturley. He's mostly interested in Aurelian lilies.
Now, I don't know the
But
Aurelian lilies.
Aurelians are they're along with the trumpets a little later. A lot of them hang, they have recurving petals. They're beautiful, and they're also huge too. They can be 7 feet tall.
Well,
Lilies, wonderful, another wonderful plant family. Can't live without.
Obviously, you've lived with lots of them.
Yes, yes, a lot of these are grown from seeds, so they don't have names. But I still like to grow things from the beginning. It just makes you more intimate with the plants, I guess. The more you know about them, the more interesting it is. I think of gardening as probably the ultimate art form because you encompass all the senses. Fragrance is a very important sense. Plus, it's three-dimensional. It's just like sculpture, like architecture you're walking through. But still, I'm very comfortable. It's not a pressure thing. Gardening is very special.